Aye.
Any opposed? Same thing. Hearing none, motion for the agenda passes. I'm also going to backtrack a little bit just to make sure we have the right count. We're going to do a roll call today since we have a few online. So, Leslie, you here? Okay. Well, please speak up so we make sure we can hear you have to say. Try it again, Leslie. Cannot hear Leslie, but I know you're here.
I'm here. I just unmuted.
Thank
Can
you.
I stay unmuted?
No, you can leave yourself open. Ann?
I'm here.
Excellent. No trade today. Jim is here. Chris? Here. Mark? Here. Brian?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Ian? Here. Tom?
Present.
And Nick? Here, Nicholas. Okay, actually, we have all that. Excellent. All right, we just approved the agenda. Same deal with the minutes. By now, you've all received a copy of last month's minutes. Are there any comments, changes, additions? The last month's minutes.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I was present. I was listed as absent in the minutes. I was present but unable to communicate.
Okay, can make that change. All right, accept a motion to approve the minutes as amended. Second. Jim got the second. All in favor again, please signify by saying aye or hand raised for those online. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion to approve the minutes is passed. We now move on to the public portion of our meeting. I see no public present, so we will dispense with the usual set of instructions and we'll move right into the director's report. As you can tell, John is out today on some very important personal business, and Steve, we're filling for John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Harold, it's Glenn. I'm here. I'm present. I'm staying muted.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to my second fill-in for Mr. Ribaut, who is, like Howard said, out on some personal business and hopefully some good words when he comes back from that. So to begin the director's report, my slideshow, I'll make sure it's up there. Today's November, the November 2022 meeting. See if I can change that. Airport update. First thing I want to kind of point out was we had in relationship with the concourse to Elegance on Hilton Head Island. We held our annual flights at Fancy. And the significance of the BMW on the beginning slide, you'll see, and I got a little short video for you guys, kind of show you what we did on that. But the event was very successful. I want to hand out a special thank you to the BMW driving team. I think I'm saying that correctly. Out of Greenville, if you purchase the BMW, you can go up there and drive your BMW. They'll teach you how to drive it and take it to its limits. And those are the drivers that came down to support our event. We got Mr. Derek Leonard and Mr. Mike Renner. Those are the drivers, which did an incredible job giving patrons rides up and down the taxiways on Hilton Head. And also special thanks to the event coordinators. We had great weather this year. I can only put so many pictures on here, so I kind of picked two that outlined what the event looked like. The weather was nice. Everybody had a great time. Over at Hilton Head, our next upcoming event is going to be the RBC Heritage. This year, with the PGA Tour and how they do things, we're getting word that it's going to be a much bigger event. More of the players are incentivized to come to Hilton Head and play in the RBC Heritage. It was already a big event, so we have some extra coordination to do with where we're going to park all their airplanes, how many we can handle, and coordination with Signature Aviation. As I mentioned in the last meeting, the tower bid, we're getting it ready to put out for bid. It's out for bid now for the tower renovations that we had grant funding for. So we can get upgrades into the tower and get them updated to the current equipment that's required. And then I kind of mentioned the enplanements and fuel sales. Last month we were increasing. This month we're increasing again over last month. Fuel sales aren't matching last year's fuel sales, but we kind of contribute that to the pandemic and the reason why a lot of people are flying. And also I want to point out Last year, fuel costs were a lot lower than they are this year. We're kind of recovering from the increase in fuel costs. Just like in your car and airplanes, that kind of everybody feels the burden of the cost going up, so you're paying more attention to it. Let's not go fly. Let's try to limit where we're going to go drive. People are getting used to those fuel costs now, and they're starting to fly airplanes more, and we see that from last month to this month, both on the jet side and on the AVIS side over at Hilton Head. Moving over to Beaufort Executive. There we go. Even though the picture of the Navion is over at Hilton Head, that Navion makes its presence known over at ARW quite a bit. So I wanted to put him in there and give him some recognition. We held our annual Flying Frog 5K event. This was the second Flying Frog, but third 5K race. We had more participants out there, and talking to the participants, they seemed to really enjoy the uniqueness of being able to run on the runway and through the hangar area and on the taxiways. We had some music out there. So I was out there making sure people were making the right turns, and everybody that ran by me had a smile on their face unless they were trying to win the race, and then they were focused on trying to win the race. So that was good. Some upcoming projects over at ARW. We just met with landscapers, a third round of landscapers, who they said give them 2 weeks and they're going to come back. But they spent a good 2 hours measuring, looking, understanding what we're looking for. So they're going to go back to the drawing board and hopefully have some plans for us within 2 weeks. So the next board meeting, we should have a better understanding of exactly what they're going to do, that we can make the outside areas of the terminal match the exterior and interior of the terminal. Same thing with ARW. Fuel sales, jet and avgas are trending up from last month, and for the same reasons we attribute those gas sales from last month. That's fun. And then for conclusion, I got a video on here. Hopefully it works. Rocio, can you scan over it? So this is one lap around Hilton Head Island Airport inside. That's the professional driver. So it's about 1 minute 26 seconds. But as he gets going, you'll see the speedometer. You kind of get an idea of the speeds that they were running around. Good tunes. It's got good tunes. That's the fire department on the right there. I think that's 140. I spent most of my evening clicking the radio to get the lights to come back on. They time out after a period of time, and they're back. Thank you, Rocio. And from that, we hope to have BMW back next year.
Oh, sorry.
I did put it out to them and everybody. Porsche did that before with us, and hopefully we get multiple car companies out there to do the same thing. But everybody had an incredible time, smiles on their face at the flights of fancy. So looking forward to that next year. And with that, that's all I have for the director's report.
I have a quick question for you, Steve. Although the airport is not responsible for the organization of the car show, the aircraft portion of this year's car show was definitely lighter than in past years. The weather was great. Do you have any input on what happened?
I don't want to speak for the coordinators of the event, but they reach out to multiple organizations that they've reached out to in the past. Some of them come from ARW. I'm not sure why people came or didn't come. I don't know if they were scared away with the weather from last year. I do know that Ann has links to that B29 and B17, so I'll be reaching out to them and putting them in contact with the event coordinators to get some more airplanes like that. We come in next year.
Howard, when you had, were you saying that the attendance was light or the aircraft was light?
Aircraft was
Aircraft
noticeably
were light.
lighter this year.
Yeah.
There weren't many aircraft there, and then thus the cars that normally are associated with the aircraft stayed on the main campus. The concourse, not necessarily at the airport, so it was just noticeably different than prior years.
It was a decent showing of airplanes. It wasn't like there weren't any there. There were airplanes there, but it was a little bit lighter this year.
Okay, I got a couple of questions if I can for ARW, about ARW. So this is the first month, I'm doing a spreadsheet trying to track, that we didn't have flight ops. Are we not doing flight ops anymore?
No, we are doing a flight off. Just getting those accountability was a little difficult.
Okay, because I just need to, if I could get, so we can just track it, just kind of keep it going. So I was looking at, basically our fuel, based on the fuel around us, isn't that far off, or we are one of the less expensive coming through. And another thing I want to remind you, just if you can get me that gross profit thing, so we can look at that and try to make some decisions. The other thing is I had some people reach out to me about hangars on the private side. They've been trying to get up. Or are we telling them we're not interested in doing the private side anymore
At
ARW?
ARW.
Yeah.
No, we're not telling them we're not interested in doing the private side. We put out that land lease option, and that's what we're entertaining right now. We have not put out a second land lease option for anybody. So we have to get closure, yays or nays on the current land lease option.
Well, nobody's put one in there, correct?
Yeah, we had 3 and those 3 merged into 1.
Right, but they haven't officially presented something to the airport, correct?
No, we've had,
Well, we've had back and forth, but they haven't brought us the lease to.
they have not, the step that they have to take is we provided them a sample lease,
Right,
and now is a negotiation time for them to return the
yeah,
lease to
and
us.
they've had that for 8
Yes.
months,
Yes.
probably,
Yes.
roughly.
Yeah.
Okay, so why wouldn't we entertain somebody else for not really, we're in negotiations, but that's open. It would be first come, first served, wouldn't it?
I haven't seen any official plans or offers from anybody. I got a handwritten one.
Okay,
Here's what I'd like to do, but if somebody's interested, they need to get with me or John and lay down what they would agree to negotiate on that original option 1 land lease option.
okay. So with the same square footage and everything, is it, or we're not really worried, we're just worried about getting that first one go. Yeah, my concern, I think once we get one going, that'll, that success typically breeds success.
Yes.
And you're still gonna let me vet the hangars that the county or the airport's looking at doing, that's still with county personnel
Yes.
waiting to come back.
Yep, we're waiting on the survey to come back. Our consultants are waiting on the survey information to see. We know where they're gonna go, but the survey information is gonna be exactly to the foot where they're gonna
where it's
go.
going, yeah.
So that company, Andrew, still has not provided that information to the county yet. As soon as I get that, I can distribute it
Okay.
out.
Yeah, does Andrews do surveying too, or they put?
Yeah.
They do, okay,
Yeah.
I didn't know Andrews did
Yeah.
survey. Well, okay, last question. I know, unfortunately, Paul's leaving. He'll be leaving on December 3rd, I believe is his last day. Which my opinion, I've been there since '07. He was by far our best manager that we've had. We've only had 2. But still, it's still a race. Once you get more than 1, you got 2.
That's
he's done a
right.
great job, and we've seen a lot of improvements.
Yes.
Since you've come on board, since Paul's come on board as well, with John. The one thing I would ask is, me running a company, I always look at there are things that I hate to pass up, and I never do. One is cash. You always want to get that whenever possible. And the second thing is talent. Do we have it in place to do an exit interview with Paul to figure out why he's leaving, what what issues came up. Maybe there are none, maybe there are some, maybe it was, so that what we can do is try to improve. So when we get that talent again, hopefully on the next person, and no offense, Paul, I hope he's better than Paul, I mean, I don't know if that's possible, but that's what you're always looking for, to make sure that we keep that person, you always want to have happy employees.
Yes. So if I'm understanding you correct, you're looking for an exit interview
Yeah,
with
exit interview.
Paul
Yeah,
or after Paul, we can set up whatever the board is looking for and we can
well, I won't say I'm talking for the board, but I think as
at least ARW.
yeah, I think
side.
ARW, I think it's more an idea, anytime we have anybody leave
Okay,
the fold, that we want to know, what they like, what they didn't like, so we can improve on it for next time.
okay. Yeah, I'll get with John and we'll talk
Yeah.
about that and set up something, at least a minimum with the ARW
ARW
side.
improvement committee
Yeah.
would be happy to do
Okay.
that.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I have an ARW question too, and I realize it may be a little premature. It's probably put in both airports eventually. But given the recent FAA approval of various versions of unleaded gasoline, are suppliers or us looking to switch at some point?
I'm not
Heard
gonna,
anything, but-
yeah, I haven't heard anything. I'm not gonna speak for, HXD side, because Signature has their fuel suppliers and they haven't mentioned anything to me yet about that. I kind of defer to Paul in the back if he's heard anything from Campbell yet on that front. I'm not sure.
Those fuels are becoming available as they become more popular. I would hope that they would try to get a tank there, either convert the avgas tank that we have or add an additional tank for that.
Well, I realize this could be a year or more out, but it's probably something that's coming.
Yeah,
I'm getting a lot of emails on it, so I'm seeing a lot of traffic on it, but nobody's really pulling the trigger yet.
I don't want to speak for Campbell or Paul, but I can imagine they're looking at it. It's obviously on their radar. I'm sure they'll get with us and say, here's what we'd like to do, or here's what we can do for you. So as soon as we find out, I'll definitely let you guys know.
I can jump in on this a little bit. That G100 unleaded fuel was just approved this summer, just a few months ago, and the estimate is it's going to take a minimum of 2 years before it really comes to market to get all the infrastructure in place. So there's going to be nothing happening in the immediate future.
Thanks, Brian.
Steve, trivial question, then a serious one. I think you indicated that the BMW drives were up around 140 miles an hour. How does that compare to landing speed of a plane?
You might be asking the wrong question because I don't know those 175.
I can answer that. The rest of come to the final approach speed is 120 knots.
So
not 180 miles.
now,
I just think it's crazy little analogy there that these people are experiencing what a plane landing would experience speed-wise on that one.
yes, sir, but I took probably the first 5 or 6 initial laps to get the drivers. Here's midfield, here's the ends. So I did 4 or 5 laps around that thing, and it is nowhere comparison. The speed comparison is extreme compared to an airplane.
More serious question. A few months ago in our meeting, there was some just general discussion about the fact that there are now electric airplanes flying. And the question came up or was noticed that we would have to consider installing charging stations.
Yes.
Is there anything going on in that regard?
I don't want to speak for John. We still are in communication with that company. Initially, I believe what you guys were briefed on that meeting is we had communications and we outlined where charging stations would benefit the airport in conjunction with Signature because they're the FBO there. We realized that where we wanted those charging stations probably wouldn't work for aircraft clearance in those locations, and an airplane sitting there for a lot longer than it takes to fuel an airplane to get a charge, so they would be in the way. So we did give that company an option, a new location for a charging station, and I haven't heard back if they're on board with the new location of that charging station yet or not. So I have to dig into that a little bit more and talk with John to get that answer for you.
Steve, maybe you correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember when John brought that up to us, I thought that was for a vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, not for fixed wing.
No, it did both.
It was both.
It was both. It did vertical takeoff and landing as well as standard.
Okay. Any other questions for Steve? Thank you.
Okay.
Don't go too far away though.
I won't.
We have some unfinished business, or does anybody have any unfinished business? I do, if nobody else does. As you recall, last month we had two presentations from Mr. Freed and Mr. O'Toole on the possible uses of airport facilities at Hilton Head Airport. Their presentations were extremely preliminary, not a lot of detail yet, and far from being given serious consideration. But John and I have gone back and forth during the month, and John has decided, as it is his prerogative to do, that this time it would not be appropriate to seriously consider that type of activity at Hilton Head Airport. And to that end, he wrote to Mr. Freed, and I assume he wrote to Mr. O'Toole, or at least had a conversation with him as follows. Thanks for your correspondence and your presentation to the Airports Board regarding the company's interest in development at the Hilton Head Island Airport. As I mentioned when we first met, although the airport recognizes there is a potential development in the area in the ARFF and the ACTC, the airport must take and has taken a position that development of that specific area will be part of a more involved planning effort. The effort hasn't taken place yet, but is on the airport's radar. Once it's underway, all of the many proposals for that portion of the airport will be given fair consideration. Until that time, the airport will be focused on the many other priorities that have been reviewed and approved by county administration. Thank you again for your communications. I felt it necessary to let you know that the airport is not in a position to discuss specific development plans yet. To give you a different impression could lead you to spend valuable funds on this before it makes sense. Kindest regards, John Rimbold, Airports Director. So those proposals are now on the back burner until such time as John thinks it's more appropriate to deal with them. Any other unfinished business? New business. Steve, once again.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on the agenda, we have 3 action items that we are requesting your vote on for approval. I'll start with the first one. That's the Hilton Head Island Airport approval of TALBERT, Brighton, and Ellington. Their work authorization, as you know, there are consultants, our airport consultants. And this is in concerning the terminal project. As you guys know, and ladies, and were briefed before, we put out bids to build the terminal in its entirety. The bids that we did receive came back and it looked like they were in the range of 40% higher than what the engineers expected that to be due to inflation. So through communications, it was decided that let's pull that stuff back and re-enter into a phased approach. Currently, the airport and the county have enough funds to be able to do what we're calling a first phase, building the first phase of the terminal along with the parking areas, and we're going to bid just that phase out. While that's being built and worked on, then John can go out and find the funds for the second phase, which will complete the terminal project. It doesn't look to be setting us back no more than 30, 45 days at this point in time, but the consultants and engineers had to go back and redo plans and redo all their evaluations to get us set up with the bid documents to put this out to bid again for just the first phase. So that work and that work authorization is what we're asking to approve.
Do you have a target date for when this next round of bids should be received by the county by?
I'm not going to give you a date, Mr. Chairman, but my personal expectation is January, February time.
Can you give us a general description of what you would consider to be phase 1?
Yes, sir. So if you remember the main terminal as it sits right now, the bones of that terminal are to be renovated with an addition to that terminal being constructed. The new apron that we had put in this past year and parts of last year is at the front of that is going to be where the new construction is built. So the first phase is going to build that new construction with the ramps, not the outdoor ramps, but the ramps that connect to the airplane to get into the terminal. That whole new section is going to be built. The second phase later on is going to be the renovation and expansion of the main terminal.
So phase one would include the new gates.
The new gates, yes, sir.
Does it also include the TSA area as well?
It does, because that's in that
Main portion.
section, the main portion.
You should have all received, as part of this month's package, a really detailed account of the contract that we're about to ask for motion for. So I'm assuming everybody has read that. And last time around, are there any questions that we have for Steve regarding that contract? If not, we'll accept a motion to approve the Talbot Bright Ellington Work Authorization 2119-1905 Amendment 1, the additional work necessary for Hilton Head Island Airport. Chris, a second.
Yes.
Mark, a second. Any further discussion? Brian, is that a second, Brian? Or is that a third? Okay. We'll get you for the next one in a second. Thanks. All in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising hands so we can see.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, members. The second item on the action items list, as y'all know, we recently acquired 3600 Road. That was part of the property acquisition on that piece of property. You'll see in the backup slides. On that piece of property, Avis Rental Car, the Avis Budget Group, they operate an area that cleans their rental cars. So kind of a mini car wash station. And they had an existing lease with the previous property owner. We are just continuing that lease in its entirety, putting it in the county's name. So we need approval for that lease to continue. That piece of property is not scheduled to be cleared or demoed in the near future. So we're able to keep that lease going for a number of years until the terminal is.
I have a question on it. So I saw that in there, it said, estimated, or didn't say estimated, just said $60,000 annual revenue stream. Is that, I'm expecting that's the actual since they've already been.
That's right.
Okay.
Any other question?
Yeah, we're talking about potential multiple years here. I scanned through there. I'm not sure I saw an escalator clause in there where it could be raised in more years going downstream. The 60,000.
I can get back with you on that. I don't think there's that clause in. We're mimicking the lease that they currently have. I'm not sure if there's a contingent that they can keep going. Obviously, when we need to clear that property for the terminal, that lease ends. But the county legal, this has been vetted through the county legal system, so they seemed and deemed it appropriate.
Thank you.
Steve, we didn't see the original lease, but the county does have an out. Should that land become necessary
Yes.
prior? Yeah, so the county does have an out because they need it prior to.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions regarding the extension of the Avis lease? All right, we'll accept a motion to approve the lease agreement between Beaufort County and the Avis Budget Group. And Brian, want to make the motion? Brian, and we'll go to the tape. I guess you have to be from New York to get that. And Leslie, Ann, a second. All right, all in favor signify by saying aye or raising hand. Opposed? Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Steve, number 3.
So for the third action item and final action item, we're asking for a vote for today is the Hilton Head Island Airport and Beaufort Executive Airport Capital Improvement Program, the CIP list. So we met a couple of weeks ago, and each year we do this to go through the projects and we determine where would be feasible for these projects to be accomplished. In the backup slides that you guys have received, they're pretty in-depth, but I'll show you these two are very good examples of getting an idea of what's done, what we're planning for in the years that we're planning out. So with this, the changes, we made some minor adjustments and changes, and with the approval today doesn't mean there can't be some minor changes that might need to be made. But this is pretty much the CIP list that's going to go forward for this year. So we'd like y'all's approval on that.
Any further, again, paperwork was imposed. Any further discussion or questions on that?
Yeah, just one question for you, Steve. The hangar project, why is that not considered a capital improvement project?
That's a private land lease.
Gotcha. And these are FAA funds we're seeking or other
The
public?
private, for the CIP list, that's FAA funds.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Any other questions? If not, we'll accept the motion to approve the airport capital program for Beaufort Executive Airport and the Hilton Head Island Airport. Nick, wanna?
Sure.
Some of the motion, Ian? Second. There's a second. All.
Jim is so quick today. You are on it.
All in favor, signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time today. Having no citizens and us, Paul, you'd like to have a chance to say something?
I do have a question about the CIP
Come on.
list. Can you come up there?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't involved in the CIP list this year like I was last year. But I have a question that 6 months ago, it was important for us to get the runway safety area completed. And now on the CIP list, it's been pushed back another 2 years. And I was just curious why that was done, if it's such an important project. And has the FAA been?
So we're still looking for letters from people to give to us so that we can give the FAA, here's the reasons why this is an important project.
And if I remember too, when we had that discussion on the ARW improvement committee, we were talking about that issue. I think if I remember correctly, and you know, you were there as well, and we followed it, is that the FAA wanted that the runway was in such, you know, it's going to be in such bad shape that that had to be done.
That had to be done first.
And by the fact that they allowed us to do that and put it there,
Yes.
they were basically saying, hey, we're going to allow it to stay open. And we're not going to shorten those runways if we're going to do this, if we're going to spend this money.
That is exactly right. Well, the money is there, and in order to spend the money, that runway, the status of that runway, we wanted to make sure that they weren't going to take the money away, and we need to get that project done. So they kind of gave us some wiggle room there, but we still have to get back with the FAA and the reasons why they should.
Is there anything, Steve, that the board can do to facilitate the process?
Humbly, I'd ask for the board to reach out to people that use that airport and write letters, official letters of recommendations, letters of why. the
If it gets
airport-
short, they wouldn't use the.
Yeah, if it gets shortened, they're not going to use, or they can't use, or they won't be allowed to use that runway.
To facilitate that process, is it possible that the director's office can get the ARW committee a list of the tenants currently at the airport?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's more about, I think it's more about, with our company, what we're doing there, we're gonna be writing a letter. As a matter of fact, I should have only got it done. I wrote it down, so I didn't forget yet. But those type of operators, Wheels Up, NetJets, anybody that comes in and out of there, that thing gets short, all of a sudden your Part 135 operation, your private charter, we're gonna be limited on what, on, you know, the type of planes that can come in there and take off. Which we were already limited, obviously, based on our size. We all knew that, but now it's going to really limit. So planes that could have landed before may not be able to land or take off.
I think this may be a case of more the merrier, though. We can get all the tenants,
Yes.
even though it's not directly impacted
Yeah.
by the threat of a shortened runway would help. So if your group can handle that, or Steve, or they can get the
Oh,
tenants,
the other
send out a mailing and let them know what the issue is and what they can do to help solve the issue.
The other question is, can you reach out to the transients like Chris is talking about?
I have reached out to a few in the hospitality sector, a couple of local businesses I know have customers that arrive by plane. So some of those conversations are happening. I could use suggestions of additional folks that are plugged into the aviation community.
I don't know if that's come through yet.
Howard, the other big thing it will do, it will make the airport less than 3,200 feet, and we'll lose our instrument approaches.
Oh, that's a good point also. No instrument approach. 3,200, less than 3,200 feet. So if that can be assembled into a message that we can get to the tenants and franchises that we have access to, I think any of the support there would be helpful. Thank you, Paul.
Can I say one more thing on a personal note?
Yeah.
I don't know, I guess everybody knows my story is the airplane that I'm in partnership with, the guy that I fly with, he also runs a charter business. So he afforded me the opportunity to come fly with him, which is kind of a lifelong dream. So that's the direction I've decided to go, because you don't get handed that opportunity very many times. I personally want to thank John Ribaut and Steve and everybody that I've worked with in the airport business here for allowing me to come in from out of state and work at the airport and allow me to make decisions to make the airport a better place. And without that opportunity, I wouldn't have the opportunity that I'm stepping into now. So each and every one of you, I want to say thank you for that, and the county and everybody that I've worked with this whole system. So it's been a very rewarding and great experience. It's a very difficult decision to make, but in the long run, it's chasing the dreams. So thank you all very much.
Well, we have one more meeting in December. You're still here, so we expect to see you.
I'll still be around. I just won't be, So
we expect to see you here in December.
thank you all.
Updates, any committee reports? On committee reports this month, okay? And the citizens' comment we've gone through.
Howard, it's Glenn. Can I make a comment, please?
Oh, Glenn, sorry, yeah, I didn't see you up there. Okay.
Well, I'm hiding behind the camera. I am interested in this business about the potential shortening of the runway, which I think would be harmful to the tourism business and harmful to business development here on the island. If you would like, I will see if I can get a letter from the town in that regard. And I would also be willing to approach the Beaufort Economic Development Corporation in that regard to see if they could put something in the record for you.
Glenn, you know, this is at ARW, Beaufort Executive, not Hilton Head.
Ah, okay. Didn't understand that. Sorry.
Okay.
Well, glad we still want your help.
Yeah, but we'll get a letter from the counseling. Absolutely, can't hurt.
And
Yeah, I can see how the Economic Development Corporation would also have an interest in ARW as well.
Absolutely. All right, thank you. All right, if there are other comments, conversations, I remind you that next month's meeting, is that correct? We're back here next month, not at Hilton Head.
No, here.
We'll have a discussion about that during the month, but at the moment, next month's meeting, December 15th, 1:30 p.m., right back here, same time, same place. So have a good month. Meeting is adjourned.